Hello and welcome to Lean In Leander. I'm your host, Andrew Naudine, and this is episode 14 of the podcast. It's also the fifth in the Vote In Leander series, and I want to take a moment just to remind you, you can go to voteinleander.com to get information on the election, dates, location, and registration potential as well. If you haven't already registered to vote, you can register to vote on that website. So I encourage you to get involved, at least at that level. Take some time to understand who the candidates are, and then vote. Show up at the polls. It's super, super important. Only 3.5% of the population of Leander historically has voted in elections locally, and given that we're closing in on 70,000 people in the city of Leander, that's just really too low, folks, and we've got to get more participation in the local elections. It helps us make sure that we have the best candidates in position of representation and leadership. And what I mean by that is that you are selecting what you feel are the best candidates. Again, majority wins and best ideas win. So take some time, learn who the candidates are, learn what their positions are, and then vote, vote, vote. Make sure you've registered to vote, make sure you're eligible to vote, and get to the polls. So, as I move on to this episode, I had the opportunity to sit at Whipped Bakery and Cafe and speak with Esmeralda Traube, who is better known as Esme to most people. She is running for place 2 and is a candidate, of course, for City Council at large. So, Esme was a really nice interview. I enjoyed meeting her. She was unknown to me before this, and she's a little shy, so it took us a little while to get going, but once she got going, she has some really interesting comments. So I hope you enjoyed what she has to say. I hope you enjoy getting to know her a little bit better, and I hope you enjoy this episode. As I'm fond of saying, if you're watching the episode, grab a drink. It'll take about 40 minutes or so, and if you're listening, turn it up a notch. This is Lean In Leander, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm here at the Whipped Bakery and Cafe with Esmeralda Traube. And we're going to have a nice little chat here about why she's running for your place 2 in the Leander city election. So we're inside. We've done all of our safety checks. We're going to go ahead and take off our masks. Remember, folks, I know that the mandate has been lifted, but this is still a good idea. Keep yourself safe. So anyway, and Esmeralda, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me in your forum.
This is something that I've looked forward to, as with any candidate. Mm-hmm. It's really great getting to know each of you as we go through this process. So relax, I don't bite.
Okay.
We're just going to have a nice little chat here and talk a little bit, really mostly about you.
Okay.
The idea is, what I'm trying to do for the listeners and the viewers is to give them a little bit of insight into who you are as a person, because I think that's super important.
I appreciate it.
You're going to have plenty of opportunities to talk about the politics stuff, and we'll touch on a little bit, but we won't go into deep dives today. Okay. So anyway, so I appreciate Esmeralda for taking some time. I know your friends call you Esme, right?
Yes.
Esme, so I'll refer to you
It's funny because it's whatever is easier for people to say.
Okay.
Because some people find it hard to say Esme, and they'll say it's easier for them to say Esmeralda. Mm-hmm. So,
well,
whatever is fine.
Yeah, my first name is Douglas, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so, it's great because when I get telemarketing calls, they're like, "Hey, is Douglas home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not talking to you." But I go by Andrew. Okay. And the reason for that is it's not the pronunciation thing, it's just my dad is Douglas.
Okay.
And so,
differentiating.
Yeah, I was just differentiating.
Okay.
I think I was in my early 20s, mm-hmm. and I got a mortgage letter for my dad. But they used my address, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want this to happen." I was like, "I don't have any money."
Well, at least you know when telemarketers are calling.
Right? No, like I said, it's a great
indicator.
trick. It's a great indicator. It's like, I know that you don't know me if you call me Douglas. So Anyway, so there you go. A little bit of insight on me. I don't normally do that. So anyway, so let's talk about Esmeralda. Esme, I know you grew up in Texas. You actually grew up in Corpus Christi.
Yes. I'm a native Texan. Been here all my life. I lived in New York for a few months, less than a year. So
okay.
I don't want to age myself too much, but I'm almost 50 and been in Texas my entire life minus 9 months.
Okay. All right. A quick little trip to New York.
Yes.
All right.
But Corpus Christi is where I'm from.
Okay.
I've been in the Austin area for 25 plus years.
Wow.
Quite a long time.
That is a good long time. That's a good long time. So you've been able to see the changes in Austin and watch things
Yes.
really completely switch direction.
In 25 years,
yeah,
yes.
no, I remember Austin when it was a sleepy little college town. So
Yes.
that was back in the day. But
and I've lived in this area for Leander proper for about 6 years.
okay.
And before that, so I'm on the east side of Leander, which is, I don't think it's something people kind of forget about, that we're over here on the east side. And so being on the east side, it's, I actually lived in the neighborhood next door. So even that neighborhood was Georgetown. So I've been in this area in Leander ISD. My kids have grown up in Leander ISD.
Okay.
So been here a while.
So going back to Corpus Christi, because one of the things you mentioned in your bio is the fact that you graduated with honors from W.B. Ray High School.
Yes.
So because you mentioned that, I was like, so what was Esme doing in high school?
What was I
how
doing?
did you graduate with honors? Was it just overall grades, or were you like?
That's actually
did you have
a good
specialty?
story and something I don't have in my bio, but I went to a special school for gifted and talented in elementary. I went to a specialized school. I was bused. And then in middle school, I went to a school that was mixed with people who were gifted and talented with just normal students, or I don't know what to call them. But so in high school, we didn't have that program. So the way I was able to do that was by going to honors, doing the honors program, which entailed going to classes that were more for gifted and talented, just harder classes.
Right. So you were like on an accelerated path or accelerated track.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I wouldn't call it accelerated normally, but I actually did graduate a year early. So
that's accelerated.
But that was my own plan, because I went to summer school, I went to summer night school, and I wanted to graduate early. So.
That's funny. My sister did the same thing, but she did it just because she didn't like high school, so she wanted to get out. She was like, I'm going to go fast and get out of high school. So, she was actually the first in my family to get her college degree.
Oh, that's
because I never
great.
finished. I started a family and, just life. So
life happens, right?
Yeah, life happens, and you just don't get back to it. My kids always tell me to go back, and I'm like, no, I don't know if that's going to happen. Anyway, well, no, I thank you for sharing that. It's again, we're just trying to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So then you went on after high school. You graduated from Texas State University.
Yes.
What was that like?
So I was a non-traditional student. I graduated when I was 26, I believe. So when I'm saying I'm non-traditional, I put myself through college, paid for it myself.
Okay.
And I was working in Austin. I actually worked at Texas Department of Housing. So I worked full-time. And then at some point I decided, hey, I need to work part-time to actually finish college, or because it was that pull of, I did have a pretty good job, and some people, my peers, I would say, would tell me, why are you going to go to college when you're going to make the same amount you're making now? So I had very supportive management when I worked at the state, where they supported me going part-time and finishing my degree. So I was working in Austin, just driving back and forth to San Marcos.
Oh, okay.
And back then, I mean, I don't want to age myself, but back then it was Southwest Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's Texas State.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that too. What's the other one? North Texas State used to be something else as well. I remember that. It was a different. It's up in Dallas.
University of North.
It was something.
Texas,
it was weird.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I wasn't there when it was Texas College of Mines, but UT El Paso, where I went to school, used to be the Texas College of Mines. So.
Oh, UT El Paso? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's where I went to school.
I spent some time there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read in my bio that I was recruiting there. So
I did read some stuff about recruiting, so we'll circle back around to that, because I did have some questions to ask you what you did there in that particular regard. But interesting. So it kind of gives a little bit of flavor. I would say self-motivated would be maybe a good term to use for you.
I mean, I grew up with my family. was kind of on the lower income side. I would call us kind of lower middle class growing up. My dad was very, I don't know, cost effective and
Frugal.
Frugal. That's the word I'm looking for. So we had to do a lot with very little.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I had to put myself through college, and my parents did support by books and when they could, but
right.
pretty much I supported myself through college. And
it's a tough road to hoe, and I have some indirect knowledge of that. I mean, I kind of put myself through college, but I wasn't a real disciplined student, you know. So it was like I'd go and then I'd take a semester off and I'd DJ and then I'd go to LA and then I'd come back and I'd do another couple of semesters. And you know, I wish I had taken it a little bit more seriously at the time, you know, but it was just I wasn't there, you know, as far as discipline and whatnot.
well, people say when you pay for it yourself, you're going to do better in school. I'm not sure that really resonated with me.
No, but it's true. It's true because you get a different level of responsibility and your outlook is different. And the reason I say that, I know that, is because my godson is putting himself through college, and I've watched him do it. I mean, and he's a super disciplined kid, you know, and it's tough, you know. And he's cried over it a couple of times because he wants to, you know, be out with his friends and do the things that they do, and he can't because he's got to go to work, or he's got to, you know, has a class and has to finish up. And so it's always interesting from that perspective, you know, when you put yourself through school. And I have a direct comparison because I can look at my son, who fortunately I've been able to put him through school for the most part. And it's just different. It's just different. You can see a different level of just how you approach it, you know.
That's true.
So anyway, enough about that.
So I would say self-motivated is good for me because I did. All my sisters really had to work hard to finish college. And like I said, my parents helped when they could, but...
Now, were you all first-generation college graduates, or had your parents done some collegiate study?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm multi-generational Texan, but my parents also went to college, but they didn't graduate.
Okay.
So my dad went into the military, and he was stationed actually in Austin, and he was stationed in California. And it was around that time with Vietnam, and he didn't go, so I was grateful for that. But
all right.
No, so I guess my sisters and I, we graduated from college. So.
Oh, well, good. So
we just did it in reverse order. My younger sister went first, then I went, and then my older sister. So
okay, well,
non-traditional all the way.
Yeah, so that is very non-traditional. Although I don't know what the traditions are there actually. So
right.
I think you just, you know, you go when you go and you finish when you finish. I guess I don't know.
It's true.
Anyway, well, you know,
that's true.
Kudos, because I think that definitely shows. Again, you know, a sense of purpose and a sense of, you know, I've got to make for myself and do what I need to do for myself. So I always like to try to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane, so to speak, just to give people a little bit of flavor of because those are influential pieces of your upbringing and your growth as an individual. And I think it's interesting to kind of talk about some of those things. So I appreciate you sharing.
And one thing too, so we grew up having a ranch, and so we're one of those Texans that has had land for quite a long time. So it's really kind of shaped me in a different way too, because my parents owned land, my grandparents owned land, and so I come from that rural background too, even though most people think of me in the city. But I did spend a great deal of my time on the ranch. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
So things not in my bio, right?
Right, not in your bio. So growing up on a ranch in Corpus Christi, was it a working ranch? Was it a farm? You know, was it more cattle?
We had cattle.
You had cattle? Okay.
I wouldn't say it would be a farm, as most people would think, but mostly in Texas it's ranches and cattle.
Okay. And this was a commercial enterprise, or?
I mean,
just for the family?
Yeah, mainly family, but we did sell our cattle. So there was some commercial aspects to that.
Okay.
From my grandfather.
Interesting. No, that's pretty cool. So from that perspective, I mean, you would have maybe a little bit more, would you say you would be a little bit more, it's not the right word, but sensitive to the needs and the issues that would affect landowners? Because obviously here in Leander, you know, there's there are significant landholders out here still. I mean, even
Right.
though, you know,
There's
it's
big
been
pieces of land still
there's
here.
big parcels that are still,
Yes.
you know, in the hands of, you know, private individuals, you know, working. Obviously, you buy land and you're either speculative in that pursuit, or, you know, in many instances, it was a ranch.
Inherited.
Yeah,
or-
you inherited, and your family's had this ranch land forever, and the city's grown to your ranch, not the other way around. So would you think that that would give you a little bit maybe of a different perspective when it comes to that issue?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the expert in that, but I mean, I do understand ownership of land and the challenges, especially as a growing community of Leander, just what people want to do with their land and what they can do with their land.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever looked at, you know, planning and zoning and things of that nature? Do you have some familiarity with those types of issues, or?
I mean, no, I mean, I haven't been on the planning and zoning committees, but I do have a background in working at Department of Housing and licensing and regulation. So from a housing perspective, I have some experience working with the state.
Okay. So
Mainly
how long
around
did you-
manufactured homes and licensing and regulation.
Gotcha. But so that you do have some familiarity then, because you understand some of the nuances of the land use and
Yes.
things of that nature.
I wouldn't say it's my primary job.
Right, but how long did you do that? Because I know it was kind of, it was around the same time you mentioned it. You mentioned it as part of like when you were at Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and then
Yes.
Texas Licensing and Regulation. So you worked with the state for a few years, but now it sounds like that was while you were going to college, right?
It was.
Okay.
I think I started at the state. I was a young 20-something-year-old. When I said I graduated college at 26, that's at 22 to 26. I believe I worked there over 5 years in various roles.
But some good exposure there,
Yes.
obviously. Okay. Was that ever something that, when you were doing that, you were thinking, maybe someday I'll run for city council, or?
You know, that is a very good question, because if you would have asked me even 2 years ago, I'm a pretty shy and introverted person, and I've never thought of ever, I want to run for city council. That's not something I ever thought would be me, but I felt compelled to do it. So I would say at that point, I would never have thought of that. In fact, if somebody would have told me 20 years ago,
you would have laughed.
I would have left, yes. But definitely, I use that experience for housing, and I was mainly in executive assistant roles and those kind of roles, but it gave me experience. And
Sure. The exposure there is huge. I mean, my wife has made a career of being an executive assistant, and she's now basically chief of staff.
I love that name, but
she knows
that's a great role.
Everything. There's nothing that goes on in that office, in that company, that she's not aware of. She knows everything. I always call her the queen bee, because they can't do anything without her. It's crazy.
That's great.
It's crazy. But from an EA perspective, I mean, obviously you were a little younger at the time, but you did have really great exposure there, I would think.
Yes, and I
A lot of
also
different
was
projects.
a webmaster, and this was back in the day when the web was just coming up. So I was doing webmaster role for the state. And that helped me with my background, because my background was computers.
Right. So that gives us a good point to kind of turn a little bit to that. You're kind of a tech geek then, at the end of the day, right?
I am.
So we share a little bit of that. I mean, I'm
that's
in
great.
sales, but I
use Salesforce, and
Okay, I've sold against Salesforce.
Okay. I've worked with Oracle and Salesforce, so competing ones.
Yeah. No,
Lots of experience in the CRM.
Yep. No, same thing here. I worked with a CRM developer. It was actually out of Austria.
Oh wow.
But it was a very visual CRM. And it was definitely a disruptor. They were looking to really SMB for the most part.
Small medium business.
Yeah,
Okay.
which enterprise was just a real tough road for us, because we just didn't have the resources to be able to support enterprise accounts. I mean, I did several RFPs and RFIs.
Requests for proposals and information.
Yeah.
I've done so many of those
Oh my
myself.
God, right? They're crazy. But there was one in particular for a company in France that was a really interesting process. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but suffice to say, I did the same RFP or similar RFPs on 4 different occasions over a 2-year period, okay? And I was one of the last 2 CRMs that they were considering. I still didn't get it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was killer. That one hurt.
I can imagine all the time you spent on it.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's crazy. But I talk about tech because one of the things that I just found super, super interesting about your bio, and because I understand the vernacular here, and most people may not, okay? So I'm going to read it the way you have it, and then we'll kind of try to explain what this means to people. So you were awarded a patent for a system and method for managing images using parent-child relationships.
I know.
Okay?
I work at Dell Technologies, and I would say not a lot of people there have patents, so I feel privileged or blessed that I was able to be a part of a patent. So yeah, I decided to put the exact patent name on there, but I know it's confusing to some people, but they still use my work. So my patent was around software. I used to be a software developer, so my patent's around software, and it's around, actually, if I can explain it in layman's terms, it's when companies and corporations, they need a corporate image. They need to order their systems with a corporate image, and that means just whatever's on your desktop. I mean, you're talking about sales, and salespeople need different computers, right, than other folks, tech support. And other, so it preloads everything. And so the parent-child aspect, you can inherit. Because maybe everyone needs Outlook, but maybe the sales team needs Salesforce or another tool.
So essentially from the software, you were a developer, so is the patent in the code? Is it the code that's patented, or is it just the
It is the code
IP?
and the process.
Okay. So I think I understand what you did. All right. So these were like the profile images, if you will. So you had a sales image and a tech image and an engineering image and a whatever image.
In a way that the customer can edit that. So they can edit it.
But it's always there, and so the on-premise IT can just say, I need this guy to have this profile, and they marry the two, and that's that parent-child relationship, right? See, I do understand it.
I know. It's about inheritance, and it's very technical. And I'm very proud of my background.
No, I think that's great.
That I used to be a developer, and I went to school for that. It was a passion of mine. I did programming when I was in middle school, so back to my gifted and talented days. But
that's fabulous. Like, and I tell this story, and hopefully the listeners haven't heard this before. I don't think I've told this story before, but I remember very distinctly. I was in high school, and I had a group of friends. What I would say is a pretty diverse group of friends. Now that I can look back on it and say, that was a diverse group of friends, and they were playing on a Commodore.
I had one.
All right. And they were programming on the Commodore. And I remember this like it was yesterday, I walk in, we were just kids, we were messing around, and playing baseball or whatever it was we were doing that day. We had been outside, we came back in, and my buddy Kazam Shakir was he's programming, and then another friend of mine, I think it was Kevin Vogel, and then Rick came in, and they start messing with this stuff, and they do these little dinosaurs that were like dancing across the screen or whatever it was. And I thought it was interesting, but then I was like, how long did it take you to do that? And they're like, I've been working on this for like 5 days. And I'm like, I'm going to go outside and play baseball. I'll see you guys in a minute. But it was an opportunity missed, because if I had known, I mean, I love the tech part of it. I really do. I love the dev part of it.
And that was me, actually. You're describing me when I was in middle school. I actually did basic programming, and it took a lot back then to do what we take for granted now, but technology's grown. So.
No, that's crazy.
I'm sure you remember in the 90s when email just came out.
I very much remember. Well, I remember dot matrix. I mean, come on, I remember DOS. Come on. I remember my experience. I was around in the tech industry when there was the Mac versus Windows wars. And our company, I worked for a Macintosh developer a number of years ago, showing my age, and we had developed, people today would be familiar with like Visio or some of the drawing capabilities that are now nested in Word and Excel. We had software that did just that. We had org chart and flowchart software. That's what we did.
Oh, wow.
Proprietary, I guess. Yeah, absolutely. We had Kodak and Polaroid as were our big clients. And I remember when we had to write the code on Windows. and it was arduous. It was like the hardest thing the company had ever done.
Right.
It was crazy. That was bananas. But anyway.
A lot of things have changed in programming,
for sure.
but
For sure.
it used to take a lot to do very little things.
But you don't really do that any longer, right?
No, I don't.
You're more of a management type of
I
role
miss
now?
that.
Or?
I'm a business architect.
Oh, okay.
And so where I am involved in at my current job, which
And
is a
this is at
full-time
Dell,
job
right?
at
This is
Dell
at Dell.
Technology.
Okay.
I'm a business architect. I've been an enterprise architect. I'm very technical in nature, but where I feel like it would lend its hand here for city council is that I am involved in planning. I plan multi-million-dollar projects. I'm involved in portfolio planning. So I ask questions. I have to document things from a technical standpoint, but from a business standpoint, to be able to translate that to technical speak to business speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you enjoy doing that?
I love my job.
Okay, so obviously you would need to.
And they're very supportive of me running. So.
Right. Because this question comes up, and I've tried to ask it
Okay.
in a similar fashion to all the candidates, just to make it fair for everybody. I'm not looking to do any gotcha moments or anything like that, but it's a lot of time of commitment to council.
Yes.
And
For volunteer.
yeah, I've repeated that over and over again. It's a volunteer position. I mean, it's not like people are getting financial benefits from doing this. It's a commitment of your time and a commitment of your personal resources, I would imagine, over a period of 3 years. So,
It's good. It's challenging, right, for
Sure.
anyone, especially if they're working full time. So I would still be working full time, but I feel I would be able to ask those right questions because I'm analytical by nature. I would spend time researching things. So that does take more time to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I would be prepared. If I didn't know an answer, I would go find out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're missing that right now. I think we're not planning well, and we're not, and I don't want to be critical about the current council, but I think planning is an issue, and I think I excel at planning. So
no, I think that's a great thing to point out. I mean, from your own perspective, and one of the reasons that you're running, I think that's a legitimate point to make.
I'm all about planning. I mean, I'm running for office. I work full time. I'm a mom. I'm busy, and I'm actually planning a wedding. Well, a COVID-style wedding, which is justice of the peace, but still, I have to plan some things. So I would say planning is my strong suit.
Okay, so the wedding thing has me interested. Whose wedding?
Oh, my wedding.
Your wedding?
Yes.
You're planning your own wedding
Yes.
while you're running for city council?
Yes.
Working full time? Wow.
I have a lot of energy. But
You do, obviously do. Obviously
well, when
do.
I'm saying I'm planning a wedding, due to COVID, I mean, we're not going to have any kind of celebration until all this is over, because I just don't want to put my guests at risk.
Sure.
So when I'm saying planning, there's not a lot of planning. It's
Right.
just trying to get name changing and go to the courthouse and that kind of thing.
Is this something you're doing in this calendar year, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Not the party, but
Right,
yes.
right. I'm only interested because my daughter's getting married.
Oh, congratulations
thank you.
to you and her. I
And
guess.
her, yeah. No, it's her wedding.
Her. Unless you're paying for it.
Well, yeah, in that case, it's my wedding. But no, that's not a big deal. But she was planning for 22. And she lives in Chicago. So I'm doing all that.
Okay.
I'm the one who's kind of helping, just coordinate venues and things of that nature. She's already got her venue picked, thank God.
Okay.
Because that was like, ugh.
I'm not that kind of, it's not going to be that kind of wedding because
Right.
it's the second wedding for me, but it'll be small and 22 or 2022 or beyond, right? Because we're still in the thick of COVID. So.
Right. Well, and she kind of planned it the same way. When Michael asked her to get married, she's like, yes, but not till 2022, because she figured, kind of a planner, all the people who didn't get married would be getting married in 21. I mean, they'd push everything back a year. So she's like, I'm going to go a year further out and get what I want. So anyway, that's just interesting. And congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
I got engaged last year, but with everything with COVID, it's been a delay, and that's
for sure.
fine.
For sure. No, I mean, it's disrupted everything.
Yes.
For everybody,
Yes.
So it's interesting to kind of get back into what I like to call the new normal. It's a new way of doing things. I think a lot of the lessons that have been learned over the past year and a half are going to be things that people are going to be applying going forward. I certainly hope so.
I would hope.
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think there's a lot that we can take out of this.
We're getting close to the final end, right? I mean, we're getting the vaccine. It's just by the time it gets out to everyone. So we're getting close to that, getting back to a new normal. So what does that look like?
Yeah, no, and I think it will be interesting because a lot of the questions that come up in council are very forward-thinking. You're having to deal with issues that might be on an agenda today, but are not really going to be issues until 5-10 years down the road. So, I was interested when you said, you feel like there's maybe a need for better planning. And I think it's interesting when you talk about that because of the speed of growth in Leander is something that I think is it's a challenge. And I've said this with other candidates. None of these issues that you may talk about in campaigning are easy things to resolve. They're not easy fixes.
If they were easy, they would have been done already.
Sure,
so,
I think so.
yes.
I think that's a very good point. I think that's a very legitimate point.
We have smart people. We have smart leaders. They're challenging, right, for a reason. And we are where we are. We're here. And how are we going to grow as a city?
So what are some of your thoughts there? I mean, what do you see going forward as far as your planner? I'm sure you've thought about it a little bit. What are some of your thoughts?
So we're at 53,000 in population, and we plan to grow. I just want to have sensible growth, and I know people think that's a buzzword, but I really want to see us planning for growth because it's expected. We are going to grow. So how do we get there? How do we make sure the infrastructure is there for what we need to grow? And I personally would like to see, the hospital with staff that we're building, right? But how are we going to support those folks that work there? We need to have housing that they can afford. The key thing is we need to keep people in this city, right? We can just go down the street right here and we're in Cedar Park and spending money there. So we need to keep people here. But I don't know about you, but the prices of houses around here are very expensive. So I'm not sure if we're attracting small to medium to large businesses. Do those workers, they want to live close to where they work, but can they afford to live here? I think we need more housing options kind of in an equitable way. So when I'm talking about my platform is about equality, it's not just about men, women, diverse candidates. It's about, do we have housing that's going to support those needs of people?
It's interesting because I know that with the developments that are going around, some of the projects that are online or coming online, there's a lot of people who will talk, and I don't like to get too deep into the politics stuff. Okay, so I'm going to touch on this and then we'll turn away. Like from affordable housing, apartments seem to be something that was considered a good resolution for that. But there's a lot of people who will complain and say, hey, there's way too many apartments out here, and it's too dense. It's too,
Well, a lot of people don't want apartments near them, but what we need to have to grow this city is we need, small businesses like the one we're at. I mean, they need people of all kinds, right? They need people who live in houses and people who live in apartments, and to be able to afford to live in that community. If people cannot afford to live in Leander, they're going to look to move to Liberty Hill or somewhere else. I mean, I would say Austin's a little more expensive, so we have that in our favor.
I think it's reasonable to say that it is pushing out. I mean, because when we first moved to Austin, my wife and I made the decision to come here from Houston. Part of the calculus was we would be able to live in an area that was relatively the same of what we were considering in Houston at the time. But when we got to Austin and we looked at that same, townhome near the city kind of thing, the costs were prohibitive. And not the sense that we couldn't afford it per se, but it was like, I'm not going to spend that much money on a townhome. It doesn't make any sense to me. The return on the equity and all that kind of stuff, I didn't see it as being a long-term, a good long-term investment, which is how we ended up in Leander. And to your point, I mean, housing out here, there's a lot of reasons why it's expensive, and COVID has not helped with that at all because, the materials and things of that nature are harder to get at this point, and probably will remain so for about the next year and a half, maybe 2 years.
And we have a seller's market right now, so quite a few people, at least in my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods, they want to sell their house because they can get quite a big profit. But then where do they move to? So we're getting people moving out of Leander because they feel like they can sell their house and move out. We really want to keep people here and spending money here and contributing to our city.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that'll come to help with that. I talked with, and I mentioned it before in another episode, I spoke with Alex Steinberg recently, who's the gentleman who's behind the Northline project, which is super, super interesting, and it becomes this, this like dense urban center that could potentially propel Leander forward. But it resolves, in my opinion, a lot of the tax-based issues. And he talked a little bit about, to talk about working and living in Leander, he talked a little bit about Class A office space and the hub and spoke concept that is becoming more and more popular, almost as a direct result of COVID. Whereas you would have a large hub, downtown Austin, and then you would have satellite offices in other areas. And I think he views Northline as being a really good opportunity to be able to do that. Which begs the question, because then it's like, okay, do you live close to the hub or do you live close to the satellite office? And I think you would live close to the satellite office because it'd be a little bit more affordable. So I think you do have a very good point there as far as having more options for affordability.
And listen, with COVID, I mean, more employers are letting their employees work from home.
Yeah.
So how about we entice people to live here by reasonable house prices, by building things that people want to go to?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting conversation piece because there's a lot of nuance to that. I think it's fair for a lot of people, really anybody. There's an element of not in my backyard.
Right.
And if you live in an established area, and going back to what I was saying earlier, there's lots of land out here and people are selling their land and
and do it mixed use projects.
Yeah, developers are coming in doing all sorts of stuff. And it was actually one of the things that I saw when I was living in Cypress, Texas, and in Houston. I don't know, you probably do know, but there's zero zoning in Houston.
Okay.
It doesn't exist, okay? People just build whatever they want, wherever they want. And so,
but Houston's a lot more affordable to live in than the Austin area.
And it's also a lot larger. So, you're talking about the third largest city in the United States, which by comparison, we're the fastest growing city. But it's a differential there. And I look at Austin and I see Austin as like Portland, kind of like LA way back in the day, before, everything kind of became one big giant city. You used to be able to, live in Orange County and not live in Los Angeles, and now it's one and the same. So that's kind of how I see Leander. And in the long run, I think that I agree with you in the sense that I think we need to have enough options to be able to support a diverse and
thriving environment?
Thriving environment, yeah. Something that economically people are spending money and they're spending it. It's the drivers. I mean, I'm in sales, so I'm always looking at that. I'm like, what's driving this?
I feel that we're trying to build a bunch of small businesses here, and I think we need to entice medium to large businesses to move here. I mean, we can take advantage of COVID, right? Some companies do actually want to move out of other states. You saw Tesla trying to move to Austin, right?
No,
so
I think those are good points. I really do think those are good points. And I think that my experience has been, I've been on a couple of committees, and I was actually, with the Chamber of Commerce, I was on the Economic Development Committee for about a year. And it was really more conversational. We had a lot of conversation about what we wanted and how we wanted it to look and what we could do. But because it really wasn't a city commission, it was really, you couldn't do anything. But those conversations always revolved around who are we bringing, who are we enticing into Leander.
But as we're doing that, we need to make sure that the people who work for those companies, they may not be able to afford to live here. So we need to have housing that is for all different
I think it's a great point.
salaries.
I think it's a great point. I think you bring up something very, very valid. And I think that's something that I haven't heard anybody else really, I don't want to say that because that's not fair. You're the first one to say it that way. Okay. So I think it's a very valid point.
I think all the candidates, we want to keep people here, spending money locally, making sure our city grows, but how do we account for all these businesses that are going to bring people who may not be able to afford a $500,000 house?
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest.
I think it's a fair assessment. It's a fair question, and it's a fair thing to ask. And it's a fair thing to look at from the perspective of how we plan moving forward. Because you wouldn't want to, in my opinion, you wouldn't want to necessarily overlook that. At the same time, you would want to address it in a way that was amiable and respectful of the people who are buying $200,000 homes.
Right.
Because it's going to be it's a different economic structure there. It's just the reality. There's no real triggering way to say that. Some people can afford this and some people can afford this. But everybody can contribute. Right. Which I think is an important point. So one other thing I want to make sure that I ask you about, because I love this one. This one, to me, it just was cool, and I was like, all right, that's cool. The Hispanic IT Executive Council, or HITECH, which I thought was cool. I was like, that's a great acronym.
I like their name too.
I think that's a great name. So how do you get involved with that, and what is it that you do with them?
I got involved with them through my current employer, Dell. So it's really for leaders at a company that are Hispanic, and I'm Hispanic. I guess I should say that because I'm Mexican American, and people tell me, well, you need to be telling people that, and I'm just like, can't they tell? But no, I'm Mexican American, and so I was chosen to attend some conferences for HITECH, and I'll be going again in spring in just 2 weeks to their conference again. And I like that they're doing everything virtually, which all these companies, like I've gone to Coveo and Salesforce and all these conferences, and they do it really well virtually because of COVID. But so yeah, I've just been over the past year involved with HITECH, and
that's cool. Now, I just love the
attending
acronym.
their conferences.
I love the acronym. I thought the acronym was super, super cool.
Oh, and they're so friendly, and when you go to their conference, they really cater to asking people where they're from. And I am Mexican American, but at the end of the day, I'm American, right? But we do have people from Brazil or Portugal, and everyone just is so friendly and shows their dances and just brings their culture with them.
Again, another nice thing to get some insight on, because your job allows you to be able to be exposed to I know this, in tech, it's a very diverse, people from all over the world. In Austin, I don't know, it'd be an interesting data point to look at to see how many HB1 visas are actually in Austin. Right. That would be interesting to look at.
And even maybe in Leander.
And maybe even in just Leander.
We're so diverse.
Sure.
That's one of the reasons I'm running, is because I want the city council to reflect the diversity of this city, which includes people like me and other folks that make it diverse.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great thing to talk about, and I definitely appreciate you bringing it up.
And you're raising a good point that I did put on my website, that I do at Dell work with different cultures, and one thing we're really good at is we have employee resource groups. So we have a Hispanic group, we have just all different kinds of groups, an Asian American group, gay and lesbian group. So I can't even count all the employee resource groups that we do have. So,
but it's important for Dell to be able to address diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, right?
Yes, and to that point, we're making an effort at Dell. I don't want to speak publicly for them, but as a personal employee, we have goals for 2030 for bringing more diversity to our management, actually.
No, I think that's interesting. It's interesting, and a subject that I know will come up. So, I did want to touch on that because I know it's part of your platform as well.
And speaking of diversity and equality, I have been involved in the Leander ISD sessions, and I think they're very beneficial for parents and students to attend those. And I've even learned some things just by listening into what other people are saying.
Well, I think that's part of what I try to do here is, let people learn some things from listening to other people. I've enjoyed meeting you here today and having that conversation.
I've enjoyed meeting you.
So before I let you go, because we've kind of covered everything, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to tell people where they can find you, what your website is, and things of that nature. So if you'll let people know what that is, give them a quick pitch.
So how you can find me is on my website. It's www.esmeforleander.com. That's FOR, esmeforleander.com. And my website is in Español también, which means it's in Spanish. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. It's definitely not my first or second language, but I'm able to comprehend and understand Spanish. So hopefully I'll reach out to some of the Spanish voters. Please go check out my website. If you can volunteer for my campaign, I'm looking for volunteers. Please email me or call me. My phone number is listed on there. And part of my campaign is about listening. So if you do have an issue, any of the residents of Leander, please feel free to email me or call me. Thank you.
So, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's very, very nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you.
And I wish you the very, very best in your campaign.
Thank you.
Good luck. And Godspeed, because you're taking on a lot.
Yes.
But I definitely can appreciate the folks that have actually done that. That's a huge thing to commit yourself to. So,
thank you.
you know,
I felt compelled.
Kudos.
So.
Well, no, kudos. And again,
thank you for this
the,
forum. So
no.
Candidates can speak out.
I think that's what I'm trying to do. You know, the whole idea is just to let people meet Esme, okay, Esmeralda, and get to know her a little bit, you know. And since you're not a fluent speaker, I had an idea to kind of speak to you a little bit in Spanish, but that's okay. We'll say that for another day. So hablamos español en otro día. Anyway. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate it. And that's it for this episode of Lean In Leander. Thanks, folks. See you next time.